Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. For over 30 years, today's guest has been studying the ancient works, researching, compiling, and translating the texts to produce an easier to understand compendium of astrotheology. He deals with the subject of syncretism, bringing together all the fields of knowledge and wisdom and showing the interrelatedness of all things. Syncretism is the opposite of division and covers all the big topics like theology, astrotheology, natural science, astrology, reclaiming dominion, breaking the fictions of religion, science and law, and the holy science. Syncretism shows how all the ancient legendary stories, myths, Bibles, fairy tales, etc. all have one simple common origin. Welcome to the show, Santos Bonacci.
Hey, how are you, Matt? Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, brother. And I hope we put on a good show.
Yeah, man. Well, the pleasure is all mine. I am very familiar with your work. I invite people to go check out your YouTube channel right away, even if they're listening to this live stream, because the amount of content you've produced, the amount of videos, the amount of knowledge, it's truly a rabbit hole to the highest and most epic degree. So it's a pleasure to have you on. And for those people who are going to be new and familiar with your work, we're gonna dive into some very deep topics today that could range from everything from, consciousness, flat Earth, the meaning of life, deep systems, like just mind-blowing stuff. So do you want to share a little bit about your background, your studies, and how you got to where you are today?
Right. Well, I'm just a humble country boy. Grew up in the country. I think that's significant to share with people. Country living, barefoot, natural foods, Italian descendancy, Calabrian, both parents. So that was something to add to that mix, and grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. I think those three things are pretty fundamental in my nature and growing up. So education-wise, I was out of school before I turned 15. I realised it was mind control. I was so out of there. I had a great opportunity to get out. I got caught smoking for the third time, and so the vice principal pulled me up to his office and said, "Well, Sammy, you really are in trouble this time. We offer you, we kick you out of school, or you choose to leave." And I thought, I'm out of there. I said, "See you later, Chimpy." That was his name. So, and then I immediately set about learning as an autodidact. Languages. I had books come in the mail, lots of books, history, science, languages, continuously. So totally autodidact, no education, indoctrination. I think all these things are very important to share. So in my teenage years, 13 to 19, I left the Jehovah's Witnesses and did all the cool things. Smoke weed, chase girls, racing cars, etc. Then at 19, I wanted to serve God and be a good boy, and I joined the Jehovah's Witnesses, as you do when you're, still partially awake, put it that way. So, but I didn't just squander those years in mind control. I did a lot of research. Since 81, I have been studying esoteric things. I was into Isaac Asimov. I was into Immanuel Velikovsky. Read all his books. Rein Norbergen, Alexander Hislop, and all of these guys were into etymology, history, the true story. So It took me years till I really awakened. It was 2005, I left the Jehovah's Witnesses. Then 2007, I was put on the right path of awakening my mind. And that started with a book called The Synagogue of Satan, speaking about the Rothschilds and their power. And I was intrigued by that, and so I just continued studying. And then for the 4 years after that, till 2011, because I had put a lot together and watching all the YouTube channels and all the truthers out there, knowing that their perspective is very limited. Everyone was doing great things, but it was all compartmentalized and no one could put it in cohesively, in an integrated fashion together. And I was already doing that. I already had theology down all my life. Languages, I was already speaking 8 languages by then. Music, professional musician all my life, astronomer. All these things helped me, laid the foundation for me to awaken really quickly. And so those 4 years were really, really rigorous book reading years. So I was trying to think of ways of getting syncretism and what I had learnt and put together out. And I didn't want to put videos out with my face on them, because at the time I was very, very, skinny, and I was sick. And I didn't look good. I'd lost weight just a couple of years. I think it was in 2009. I just lost 10 kilos. And I was all sunken in the cheeks and everything. And I just thought, I can't put my face on there. I'm looking my worst I've ever looked. But eventually I realized I had to, because the truth that I had needed a face. People needed to see the person presenting it, I felt. And I wanted that contact. I really did. It's very important for me. And so most of all of those videos, if not all of them, are me presenting looking very unhealthy. And my health issues are over now. I could talk about that later if you'd like to know, because I did many protocols, and eventually I found that I had to get rid of parasites. And so now my health is right on track. And I've also eliminated, through healing sessions with the help of others, great healers, entities. And the entities are connected to the parasites. So once those are removed, we can all function to our highest capacity, and we can be happy, and we can have peace and joy and love, and everything goes well when you eliminate the agents of demonic entities, which are parasites. So I'll just insert that now, because I would just like to add that since 2011 then, I have not ever stopped publishing syncretism in one format or another, whilst I've had the worst years of my life, health-wise. I've had extreme torture, jail twice, moved house 9 times, removed 9 of my back teeth, which were root canals. All my back teeth are gone. Look, I could just sit here and tell you all the tragedies, and they are astrological too, by the way. I've been under a 7-year curse called the K2 period. For the astrologers out there, you might want to look that up. We all come under the dominion of the 9 planetary bodies of astrology, including the North Node and the South Node, and the 7 visible planets. And they have some 20 years, some 7, some 18, some 15 years of rule over your life. And when certain planets are ruling, they can bring disastrous, bad luck energy into the life of the individual. So I'm happy to say that in 2 months exactly, my 7-year K2 period will end, and a great blessed 20 years of Venus who is in astrology a benefic. In other words, she's a benefactor. And she brings love, peace and harmony and wisdom into your life during those 20 years. K2 brings disorder, mayhem, loss of everything, and you'd lose your head. And believe you me, all the trouble that I've gotten myself into in one form or another is because my head has, and my thinking, not my heart, my head has caused me to make very, very bad decisions. And I also have a strong self-sabotaging component in my astrological chart. So there you go. I thought I'd just present it that way to the present time, Matt. I'm now very, very happy with my achievements in syncretism. And I'm transmuting all the bad behavior that came with the K2 period and putting my best foot forward as much as I can and as I've always tried to do. So I'm happy to talk syncretism with you today.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm glad you're feeling better, because I was listening to a few of your podcasts. You did a couple with the Truth Seeker podcast, and you were on Rex Bear's show, and you've got a ton of content on your YouTube channel. And I know your health wasn't good, so I wasn't sure if you were going to do the show. And first of all, I'm glad you're feeling better and starting to get on the other side of it. There's so many topics that we could dive into. So the first thing that I just wanted to ask you in general, you're coming on the show, you're interviewed a lot. You are definitely a celebrity in the astrology space. So many people have reached out to me and asked that I interview with you and dive deep. So is there anything that you wanted to start with today as far as your work goes? Because otherwise I'm going to ask you a million questions, and you can kind of pick of those what you feel is most important.
First thing that comes to my mind is the model I would like to share through which you can know all things. There is one and only model, and this has escaped many great truthers to their own impediment throughout history. There is a simple model, and the Egyptians spoke of this in their great axiom, their great motto, all is Atum. And Atum is the model, because Atum is the all. And so when I first meditated on this expression years ago, not long ago, I'd say about 6 or 7 years ago, I think the first presentations I started to put together about this subject of atom or Atum was around 2013, 2014. So that's not long, but I was reading an Alvin Boyd Kuhn book about language, the esoteric nature of language. And he was speaking about the atom and the fact that it means that it's indivisible. Therefore, I pondered on this, and I thought, well, if atom means unit, indivisible, the one, the monad, and by the way, monad is an anagram for Adam, which is atom. So, knowing languages very well and knowing that an A in front of a word is called a privative or a privative. So when you have a Gnostic, you have a believer, a knower. An agnostic, with an A in front of it, privates the word of its original meaning and gives you the opposite. So I realized then that Tom, without the A in front of it, means twin, Thomas. So in one word, you have the monad and the dyad, which is better known as the demiurge, the demiurgos, the god of two. And that turns out to be the god of red shift, blue shift. Red and blue are the two opposing vortex colors of the atom. Every atom has a red polarity and a blue polarity. And in the middle is the white light. So Thomas, meaning twin, twain, means to divide the monad. And so we see this process in nature where unity divides in order to express itself. And so points of energy called atoms, hence our body is an anatomy, and we also have a torso, which is an anagram for Taurus, hence the Taurus field, which emanates from our aura. Taurus is torso, and anatomy means a body of atoms. And so when you realize that the true model of the universe is the Taurus field, and that is an atom, then you realize that through this, call it a field, an energy field, which expresses itself in the time-space continuum, we realize that all things are doing this. And so at the center of the Taurus field, there is what's called a hyperbola. And I have my whiteboard here because in your message to me, when you asked me to do a show, you said you might like me to do a presentation. So I thought, well, I'll have this whiteboard nearby. And so what you have is a point. That is the nucleus, the neutron. And so two vortices always proceed from 0 point. And one is redshift, and the other is blue shift, as Walter Russell has it. Okay? And so they are equal opposite. This is electricity, proton, electron, neutron. Now that's not exactly correct, because a proton is something that is radiating, according to Walter Russell, and an electron is something that is gravitating. All right, so let's just tip it up back like this again. And what we have is, this is the hyperbola. That's a hyperbolic. Hyperbola in Greek means hyper means excessive, and bola means, the root of it is in ballistic, bullet, bellicose. It's a war-like energy, because this is force expressing itself. And this is in your torso, Taurus. This is in atoms. This is our cosmology. The flat earth is also in this. It is the plane. There is a plane of inertia in the middle of all Taurus fields. And so what you have is a Taurus field. That is a Taurus field. And as Ken Wheeler says, you cannot speak of a Taurus field without speaking of a hyperbola. And then again, you can't speak of those two without speaking of the block wall, the plane of inertia, or the planet of Eartha. This is the earthing point of the two vortices. Here they are nullified and reversed. So in your torso, your top chakra is blue, where your head is. Here is your head, and your throat chakra is blue. The bottom chakra here is red, and that is where the symbol, the same color of the menstruation of the woman. You see? Red blood, blue blood. Red shift, blue shift. Red pill, blue pill. Red siren, blue siren. Red hot water, blue cold water. You see? Boy girl or girl boy, red and blue, red and pink. Pink and blue, which are the colours that we put with our children. But the list goes on and on and on. And so what you have here is the monad, atom or Adam in the Garden of Eden. And you have the dyad, the demiurge. You can see it as two polarities this way or two polarities this way. But this is how the Creator produces all effects in the material world through torus fields. Hence Krishna, the Creator, he's always with his cows and his flute, because the flute is the sound, the sonoluminescence from these torus cows, holy cows. So these are the holy cows. And why they are holy is because they are holes. That's a hole in counter space. You see, information comes from here, from counter space, not from this realm. Just as people seeing our image on their screens, the information is coming from the ether, hence your Ethernet cable. And that is, it's all magnetism, electromagnetism. And so these points in counter space, incommensurable, point non-specific incommensurability is how Ken Wheeler calls it, because they have no locus, no topos, you know, they just come from counter space. So I always use the analogy of the computer. With a computer, your files are in counter space, they're just information, and yet they produce an image on your screen. There's nowhere in space where you can see the information on a hard drive where you can see your image in there. Just as a doctor cannot open your body and find emotions and thoughts because they are in another realm, counter space. They're not spatial. They don't occupy any place in space. Hence, a hard drive full of data is no heavier than a hard drive that is empty. So out of the emptiness, this is where they get the Big Bang Theory. Oh, it all came from nothing. No, it's quite the opposite. Everything comes from everything. Everything is here. All potential is here in counter space. All the information, all the hard drives are there, not occupying any space or running along a timeline. They are outside of these realms. So what's going on here is there is a pulse, and that pulse radiates. And that radiation generates a vibration, which is electromagnetism. Radiation is different to vibration. And it's the secret of knowing all things is knowing the difference between these two waves. So when you throw a pebble in a pond, you have radial radiating circles called radiation waves going along a longitudinal plane along its medium. And as they do, they encounter ohms, impedance, resistance. And that pushing against the medium is creating a wave, which is a vibration. Redshift, blue shift. Redshift, blue shift comes from the pulse, heartbeat. Your heart is here, the green chakra, and it radiates. Hence, your heart is radiating and you check your pulse. So when you understand the radiation is radial and longitudinal, which generates the vibration, which is transverse and polarized, then you understand how creation actually works. The model of the atom with the neutron and the proton and the electron is correct. But what they are saying to us is that the electron is, or the electrons are spinning around and making like a cloud. Well, that's the torus field. And what they're looking at is not just electrons, but electrons and protons. A proton is redshift, right turning, rotating magnetic fields. Blue shift is left turning, rotating magnetic fields. Red is right, blue is left. And that's why you have Republicans are red and Democrats are blue. Because they understand the red shift, blue shift, red blood, blue blood, etc. Polarity, paradox, and how it belongs to the world. Yeah, go. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. You know, it's so dense, and it's even like a challenge for me to follow. And it's important that people do their best to follow this, because as you were going, I Googled, just for clarity, red shift, blue shift. So I just wanted to share, because it started to become a lot more clear for me as you continue, the more I listen. But I just wanted to share with the audience, a blue shift is any decrease in wavelength, increase in energy, with a corresponding increase in frequency of an electromagnetic wave. The opposite effect is referred to as redshift. In visible light, this shifts the color from the red end of the spectrum to the blue end. So you just were referring to that a lot. So I just wanted to bring that up as you continue. So please continue.
Right. So this chakra has 16 petals. The bottom chakra has 4. Because it's about frequency. This is blue light is a short wave. Red light is a long wave. So it's a lower capacitance wave. Higher capacitance. It has more capacity to contain more information. It's opposite in the material world. A large suitcase has a greater capacitance than a small suitcase. So what we have here is 7 frequencies along your torso, torus. And they are 7 conditions and 7 states of consciousness. Below the heart chakra, you have materialism. Above, you have spirituality. And this is the dichotomy of living with bodies, with animal bodies in the material world. We are spiritual, having a physical experience. So, and this is how we have a physical experience. This is the most important thing to know, because all is atum, and all is based on this. Words come from this. Numbers come from this. In fact, when we study words, we study etymology. Well, this is nothing but atomology, because words come from atoms. Sonoluminescence. God is light and God is sound, the word of God. And in scripture it says, and the word was made flesh. That's not referring to one man in history who vacated his godship in heaven to become of flesh. No, it's speaking about the word, sound, making flesh. Flesh is what is material. So sound is behind the vibration of the material world, because the vibration is material energy, electricity. The pulse, that beautiful radiation which radiates from here along the plane of inertia, that is magnetism. Magnetism is spiritual, divine energy. Electricity is inferior, material, temporal energy. Temporal, because everything that is born in time, in matter, will perish in time. It is unstable. Whereas here in the transcendence, counter space, everything is stable. and infinite and eternal. And so this is why when you're listening to the radio in town, it's nice and crisp, because they are using the transverse wave to send radio signals. So when you drive out of town, eventually you get to a point where it starts crackling and decaying the quality. That's because the transverse wave has a very great decay factor to it. Like the waves of the ocean. Out there, they're very big, but by the time they get to the shore, they're all flattened and leveled out. And those are the waves, similar to the waves of everything in creation. This is why we are encouraged in our scriptures to seek God, to seek the divinity, to be spiritual. Because why would we get lost in this world of transverse vibrations which are decaying? You see, when we're born, we're nice and fresh and enthusiastic about life, and we have so many passions. And then we get dried up, old. Toward the end of our years, we get bitter, dried up, closed up in our minds, and we begin to decay rapidly and get sick and all kinds of mental diseases, etc., and we give up. And this is a natural process, but it's not meant to be so quick and sudden and brutal. We are supposed to actually enable our own death after thousands of years of living, and that we still have the elixir of life in our bodies, which will enable us to live forever. And I also speak about that elixir of life, which is the chrism in your body, which enables you to rejuvenate and live forever. But getting back to this, though, because I want to exhaust this, it's very important. This is also the model of the universe. So the Earth is this plane here inside this massive solar system. The sun is orbiting circular over the Earth around here, as well as the 7 planets. They are Snow White and the 7 dwarves. They are Noah and the 7 other members in his ark. Ark. This is the bark of Ra, the bark of Noah, you see, because they are arcing, electrical arcs. So you see, it's all science in the scripture. And so this would be the heavens, the firmament, what they would probably call the Van Allen belt or the something sphere, but it's the firmament. And the Bible speaks of this, ancient astrology speaks of this, ancient philosophers speak of this, all up until the Copernican revolution 500 years ago. Jesuit psyop, intended to deceive mankind of how the cosmology really works. And this is the one and only true model of all things. So, as man is the measure of the universe, the Egyptians taught, this must be the way the cosmos works, because we are the measure of the universe. This is the man or the woman, the torso, and this is the tree of life. You see? Bol, hyperbola, bol is a tree, as in Spanish, arbol. In Italian, arbol with an L. Well, it's the same, but there is arbor. Yeah, well, Latin. Okay, so in Latin, it's arbor. But that bor or bole, this is the tree. You see? Your spinal column with your spinal cord channeling all of that information from this conscious network up into your cerebrum. That is your tree. Hence, that's why you have a lumbar. You have at the bottom of your above the coccyx, above the sacral, you have 5 bones called the lumbar. Lumbar, bar is bowl. It's the same word. And you'll find this central core pillar or tree or column, hence the word obelisk, bell, bowl, bell. You see, it is the phallic. Phallic is another word that comes from this. See, there's the phallic, and there is the womb, the tomb, the atom, because the tomb is the atom. Alvin Boyd Kuhn describes it as in this way, that light, divine light, causal of all effects, as it penetrates through the material world, it gets entombed and reaches a point where it must then return. And that entombment is the atom. You see, we come from a womb, we end up in a tomb. You see, so we come from a soma and we go to a sema in Greek, as Plato described it. Soma being somatic, the body. So either way, time is related to tomb or tom, Timmy and Tommy. And it's this model of the universe. This is how the time-space continuum expresses itself. Here is space, and longitudinally we have time. So there are many other ways of expressing this. And in my presentations, for instance, I show how you can do this because that's just a sine wave, by having the equator line of energy, the 0 point, and then having above and below enough room for expression of the energy, which we call the sine wave. So if you look at a map of the Earth, you will see that it has an equator, a Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere, and a Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere. And what you have is the ecliptic of the sun, which starts at the equinox, March the 21st every year, and it travels for 3 months. That's the springtime, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, because March the 21st, the equinox, is where Aries begins, and the spring. So the sun then 3 months later, from Easter, comes to June the 21st, Cancer, and that's where Cancer begins. At this tropic, the Tropic of Cancer. And then summer begins, and the sun begins to fall until it hits the equinox in September 23rd, and then the fall begins, the fall of the sun. You see? And then the winter on the 21st of December, St. Thomas Day. Coincidental? No, because you see that letter T, and that day there, the solstice in Capricorn, St. Tom's Day, because you see Tom is on the top of every church. When you go to a church, you are going to learn the science of the atom. Hence, the symbol of the atom is here, the sine wave, the swastika, the cross, the yin and yang. See, the yin and yang is in the sine wave. So here you have the fall, and here you have the winter. Now, this is the way to model the torus field, because this is the yearly wave that the sun is producing in its 365 and a quarter revolutions above the Earth as it goes up to the Tropic of Cancer, down to the Tropic of Capricorn, up, down, up, down. So here you have Capricorn, and you have the goat climbing up the mountain. The sun is the goat, the sacrificial goat, sacrificing its energy to feed humans. Then Cancer, the crab, cranky as it is, doesn't like to walk straight. It likes to walk sideways. And hence the sun begins to wane and go back down to the goat. From the goat to the crab, the scarab. And the scarab of Egypt was always, the dung beetle, was always climbing up the hill, waxing, and then rolling the ball down, waning, and hence the crab, the scarab, is always doing this. So what is expressed here is wavelength, time, and wave amplitude, space. And so when you understand that the year is the same as the day, then you begin to make things interesting. Then you realize that 6 a.m., the morning begins here. The morning is the same as the spring. It's moist. It's wet. There is dew on the grass. This is the same in spring. It's the golden age. Silver, bronze, iron. Midday begins the hot part of the day. So here you have wet. Here you have hot. Of course, the summer is here, and we are right here now in the sign of Leo. It's July 31st in Australia, and the dog days are upon you guys, and it's very hot in America. I hear from all my friends around the place. So the sun is here right now in the first degrees of Leo, and it is the summer, the silver age, hot. Here we have the fall, the autumn, because the sun goes down to the tomb of winter. Infernal, invernal, the winter. And this now is dry. Wet, dry, hot, cold. The four universal elements. In astrology, you must know these four humours. Two are positive, patience. One is, two are active, agents. Two are passive, patience. Hot and cold, they are active agents in creation. Wet and dry, they are passive. So what we have then, the remaining part of the day is the night time. So here we have the morning, here we have the afternoon. And it's always hottest between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, you see. This is a 24-hour clock. 12 midday, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6. So you have 6 over here, you have 6 over here. And the sun sets here. And the sun has to descend down into the evening, even. The evening begins here where everything is even. Sun sets, goes down, falling in the fall, but in the evening, it comes to midnight. And here begins the coldest part of the day is always here between 4 and 6. 4, 5, 6. And so the winter represents the cold of the night. So now you understand how the day is mimicking the night. how the day cycle is mimicking the yearly cycle. So we have, for instance, in summer, there is more light. And during the day, there is more light than the nighttime. So the winter is the nighttime and it's cold. The summer is the daytime in the yearly cycle. And so the day and night is only a miniature fractal cycle of the year. When you understand this, now you understand how all waves happen. Here is the plane of inertia is the equator, where everything is zeroed out. Here, on the 21st of March, the sun is equaling the day. That's what equinox means, equal night. And so this is the point of beginning of light's journey as it goes to wave amplitude and then gets thrown back in the other direction, equal and opposite, to go through the equator again and express itself on the other side. And this is happening simultaneously like a two-way pump, as Walter Russell puts it. And so all waves begin at 0 point. They all start with fire, Aries, plasma. And then as they go through the signs, they encounter 4 elements: fire, air, earth, and water, which are nothing other than plasma, gas, liquid, solid, which are nothing other than frequencies of energy. So for instance, now in the summertime, people are energized with passions. The heart, Leo is the heart. It's hot, it's summer. People are outdoors, recreation, picnics, pleasure, enjoyments, matters of the heart, having time spending with children in the semester, in the holidays. Children, pleasure, all things to do with the 5th sign and the 5th house in astrology. Then when September comes, Virgo, the sun is passing through an earth sign. See, Leo now is fire. So we have the passions of fire now in the summer. But then Virgo brings a different energy. It's the harvest season. Summer is drying up. It's cooling. See, the dry of autumn will dry up the summer. And this is where the bread and the wine are made yearly, 2 symbols of Christianity. Christ is the sun with his 12 disciples going around the circuit of Galilee. This is the circuit of Galilee. Check your Strong's Concordance. So you see, the sun will be now emanating a different frequency from the Taurus field. It will be emanating a solid frequency. Virgo is earth. So people will be contemplating in the last days of summer. You know, they'll be collecting their harvest, their bread. They will be analysing the year, their life, and contemplating things and being organised and getting ready, Virgo themes, for the cold winter and the season of no food. So here they have to, you know, cull the flock, so to speak, or, you know, keep the good stock, you know, safe through the winter. And also the harvest of the summer, they are now going to put all their fruit in jars, preserve them, make all kinds of preserves and store their nuts in the cupboard, etc. So we see how all cycles work. As the sun goes along the ecliptic, it generates, it transmits information because the sun is a hole in the sky. It's a holy, hallowed hole, wormhole in the sky, and it is transmitting life-giving information and consciousness. So as it goes through Aries, it inspires us with motivation to climb, keep climbing. It's springtime. You'll get there. Go up to Jerusalem. Have a pilgrimage and reach the Tropic of Cancer, where Jerusalem is. And then Taurus. Taurus brings an earthy energy where people are ready to cultivate their ground, pull the bull out and plough and plant seeds for the summer and watch them grow. And so they have an earthy energy in the middle of spring. And they have the maypole on May Day, 1st of May, in the middle of Taurus. And they celebrate the pole of the maypole. That is the phallic. That is the sun returning through Taurus to impregnate the earth with seed. And Taurus, the bull, and the maypole, hence why the maypole is always greasy and slippery, because the sperm must be generated at this point if you want to harvest in Virgo. And see, Gemini is another energy. It's another frequency. It's an intellectual frequency. And so at the end of spring, people are sending messages, traveling, communicating, writing books, all themes dealing with Gemini. It's a different energy. And so you've got 12 separate seasons and distinct throughout the year. These are the sun, S-U-N-S-O-N, with his 12 apostles, the 12 posts. These are the apostles. You see, so this is the way to model energy in its expression, in a 12ness. The Taurus field is a 12ness. It's not a 2ness. We limit ourselves by seeing energy as positive and negative. It's not. They are two polarities of 12 expressions going through every wave in the history of time and space. Every one of them. They all have 12 different conditions along their cycles, and they repeat over and over again. Our Gospels recount this science. All our Gospels, all of our legends, the hero always has 12. Jason and his 12 Argonauts, Jacob and his 12 tribes, Ishmael and his 12 tribes. The list goes on and on and on, because what they are teaching you in a theological way is how religion is science. They are two sides, two faces of the same coin. You cannot separate them. You can only join them. And so all of our nursery rhymes, fairy tales, etc., they all are teaching this. Our tragedies, our operas, our plays, our theatres, they all start in Aries and they all finish in Pisces. And forever we are telling the same story. There's only one Taurus field story, because his story is exactly based in Taurus fields, atoms. And this is why we have so many words ending in Tor: actor, demonstrator, creator. And we have so many words ending in bull: able, capable, reliable, responsible, because the hyperbola, the bull, the bullseye, in the center of the storm, storm is also Tor, as in story, because these create storms. They're expressing themselves, they're rotating magnetic fields. These are storms. These are turbulences. These are, hey, there you go, turbulence, Taurus bull. Terrible, Taurus bull. Temple, Taurus bull. The list goes on and on and on. In every language, there are Taurus, and bull words. The red Taurus, the blue bull. So, look, I mean, that's just a condensed version of what I do in my presentations, but everything is based on this, and this is the only model for which we can know all things, because every other model comes from this. Kabbalah comes from this. Buddhism comes from this. Hinduism, astrology, alchemy, philosophies, languages, numerology, gematria. This is the model of all of those. So sorry to hit you with all that powerful download.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was paying attention, and I've seen some of your videos before, and it does require listening, and it does require research. And as you're speaking, there are so many similarities and things that I wanted to kind of share and bridge some gaps for some of the listeners. You know, one of the people's work that I was reminded of was Eric Rankin, who made a great documentary series on sonic geometry. He was on the podcast and basically talking about everything being vibration and music and sound. And you're also a musician as well. Just understanding, you know, the fields of magnetism and electricity. Also, you talk a lot about polarities. And when you're talking about moving up the spine, you know, when I started researching spirituality and, you know, Gnostic texts and esoteric texts, it just talked about moving the energy up into my pineal gland, and then I could access spirit and all of those kinds of things. And so as you were moving through there, and, you know, I've done, you know, went through the Resonant Science Foundation and some of their stuff on the Taurus field and things like that. So I'm familiar with a lot of those points that you're touching on, and it's extremely fascinating stuff. And you know, I went through Graham Hancock's book as well, Fingerprints of the Gods, and he was talking about all these myths. And a lot of the experts that I talk to in private that are absolutely brilliant, like Robert Grant, who's a mathematician and has made all these great discoveries. When he talks about the ancient religions, the ancient texts, he's also telling me that it's a formula. And apparently, you know, the work of Walter Russell and Ken Wheeler, the people that you're referring to, a lot of these physicists and these teachers and these mathematicians were actually esoteric researchers as well. And what I have heard and what I have learned is that a lot of, well, all of these myths, just like you're saying, are referring to something more scientific, more mathematical, and it's ancient knowledge being passed down. And when we see it in a different way, we understand it in a different way. And I've had a couple, you know, I've watched a lot of Jeffrey Daugherty's videos, and I've had a couple conversations with him. And he's a former, you know, evangelist, 100,000 Bible hours. And he's like, when you learn to see it from its true nature, what it actually is, and the information, it becomes very, very clear, and it's not mysterious. And so why would all of these histories and why would all these fairy tales and all of these texts be the exact same? Why would they have the same numbers, the same you know, story? And that's what Graham Hancock in this book really illustrates so very well, is all these similarities as you're doing now. So I invite you to kind of share anything that you wish, if you want to wrap that up in another way. But the questions that I have that I wanted to go into that is, number one, how do we use that? Because I don't know how to use it. And two, I want to blast a lot of stuff at you. And because even there, you talked about the Ark of the Covenant. And, you know, when I was in Egypt with the Resonant Science Foundation, people were giving me such different answers than I'd heard before, and such in-depth research. And then I did my own research, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a very fascinating thing. But seeing the arc as, you know, electrical arc is such a different concept and idea that it really makes you think. And there's so many other things that I could go on too. I was thinking about the Tower of Babel and separating language and what language is. And not a lot of people may be familiar with how you're, you know, saying these words and these origins. But if you look at the Latin origin and you study word, it is very important, and where that comes from, where those root words come from. And in my research as well, you know, I've heard that language has been used against us and all kinds of other stuff. So I'm rambling here, and want to just throw it all back at you and kind of ask, like, in a nutshell, you know, what do you think is going on in the earth? Like, how is the earth, how is this entire thing operating? What do you think as a human being, how do we express ourselves fully? And I'm going to send a bunch of stuff your way, but you pick the one that you're most inspired to speak about. For you, in your experience in doing all of this research, what would you recommend to find personal freedom and experience in spirit and God? Because when you were the Jehovah's Witness, you were very devout, as you said. You were out there and you were doing it to the maximum degree because you wanted to be spiritual. You wanted to connect to God. You felt very strongly that you wanted this connection and this truth. So, and then the last kind of thing I'll throw in this bucket here is, what do you think happens when we die? What's the whole point of us existing here in this space and time? So that was a lot, but I know you can kind of go into any tangent. So I wanted to give you all that so you could choose what you find most inspired to talk about.
Okay, so where do we go when we die? The body dies. It's just a vehicle. So when you reboot your computer in the morning, the information that you call up onto your screen is in counter space. It was sleeping. But now you have revived it. And what you are now doing is you're going to improve on those files. You're going to add to them. You're going to make them better. Then at night, you turn your computer off, go back to sleep. It's still there. The information is still there. It's protected in counter space. It's all organized in such a way that as soon as you reboot your computer, within minutes, it'll be right there. Faithful, true, and uncompromised, not corrupted. So that information is protected at night when its computer is sleeping. This is how we are. We live forever in that file in counter space. And when we decide to incarnate, we do so for the purpose of improving that file, not depreciating, not degenerating, but generating to purify what is there. It is already perfect. We are God there. Here we are God with difference, individualized units of God. So back there, we are God, unchangeable. But God expressing itself is experiencing polarities for the sake of experiencing. That's all it is. It's not loneliness. It's not boredom. It's a natural process. It goes on forever. The computer's not bored when you reboot it. It's excited. Everything fires up, lights everywhere. And the file comes through the RAM just like that. You call it, it comes forth. And this is how our lives are. Where we go is in a very, very safe place, an eternal abiding place. And there we want to bring back glory. We don't want to be glorified here and have a name, fame, riches, power, distinction in this world. This is vanity and temporal. This world will be gone one day. But our files are always there in counter space. So we return, the spirit, it says in Ecclesiastes, returns to God, the maker of it. The soul that is sinning, it itself will die. You see, when we go on the sinister sin path, the left brain, and we deny our divinity, the right brain, and our creativity and our source, we are sinning. And that soul that is sinning, it will die. Meaning, if you incarnate, you will be sinning along the way, can't escape it, your body will die. Because a soul is in reference to the body. It is in reference to, because the soul is the body for the spirit. The body is the body for the soul. You see, so it steps down. The soul is in the middle. The soul is your 7 chakras. Your spirit is in your heart and in your crown chakra. That's your spirit. The spirit is 1. The soul is 7. The body is 12. Hence, you have 12 cranial nerves, 12 petals in the crown chakra, 12 systems in the body, etc. The body, the physical, is a 12ness. And the 7 represents the soul, which emanates forth and animates the bodies. It's the soul, the breath. Breath means soul. Inspire, expire. And these are the 2 halves of electrical red shift, blue shift. See? Red shift, blue shift, compression. Red shift, radiation, right turning energy. And so how do we express ourselves was another part of your question. Well, we do so by understanding the 12ness of nature. If you've missed this, you've missed everything, because then you will understand why people are the way they are, whether they belong to the sign of Aries or Taurus or Gemini. And you will be able to see traits, physical features, emotions, intellectual nature. You'll understand why people think the way they think. A Geminian thinks quite differently to an Arian, etc., etc. And their emotional nature is different as well. So when you know where their moon is, they've got a moon in Cancer or Taurus, where their sun is. When you know these elements, you will know what's coming to you. You will see the energy. And you won't miss all of this glory. You won't go around. You see some people, they go for a walk in the forest. Well, I love walking in the forest. They don't see anything. They just walk. They miss all the birds and the flowers. They miss everything. And all they got out of that 2 hours of walking was physical exertion, exercise. They didn't add everything else. Pleasure, learning about the animals, looking around, breathing, meditating. There's so much more to add. And you see people doing this daily. They're missing all of the glorious transcendental stuff that is going on. And when you transcendentalize in your life, life has meaning. You are no longer bored, depressed, angry. You now have something to live for. So I encourage everybody to learn this science. It's the true science. It's not religious per se, as you would know religion. It's science. It's knowing. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Free from what? Ignorance. And you can't be ignorant when you know this. You cannot. You open the door to all fields of knowledge. All the philosophies are based on that. Electricity, magnetism, the wave, the transverse wave, the longitudinal wave. They are all taught in that model. And you mentioned the word tower. I don't remember in what context, but look at the word tower. It's nothing other than Tor, Jupiter, who is also called Thor to the Teutonic people and the Nordics. Tor, Thor. See, Jupiter. It's the Taurus field. Hence, Jupiter is always associated with cows. The bull of Europa, when he raped Europa, he pretended to be a bull. Why is Jupiter playing with these animals? Why is the Bible always talking about the holy cow, the bull of Aaron, you know, the sacrificial bulls, the sacrificial lamb? It's just Aries and Taurus. Aries is here, the cerebrum. Taurus is the cerebellum. Gemini, the twins, are the twin hands. And it goes starting from Aries all the way down the body. The 2 feet are the 2 fish of Pisces. You see? The 2 hips, they are the 2 hippos of Sagittarius. Hippo means horse. So when you move your legs, you're moving with your Sagittarian hips a la hippo. You see? Leo is the lion of the heart, hence the lion heart. Why are these coincidences in our language? Because everything comes from this. All is atom. All is atomology. And the sooner we penetrate this knowledge and share it and practice it in our lives, the sooner we will have bliss. Bliss. We will usher in paradise. Paradise is just around the corner. It's here. It's just we have to enter that state. We have to expel our demons and go into the love state, unconditional loving and forgiving.
Well, you touched on a lot of things there again, and I really liked your example of how you used like the life after death, and what it reminded me of. And you spoke about this a little bit earlier, how we are supposed to live longer than 100, and everything that I've looked at and reviewed. And Santos is going to be back in a second, but he can hear me. Everything that I've looked at and viewed around spirituality and the great masters has said that our lifespan is being very limited. And you're actually, in the Bible, I'm pretty sure it says people are living to 300 years and maybe more. Stories of people living, I've heard from, 700 years, 900 years is more of our natural life. And that's an interesting concept, because if the first 100 years of our life, we had the same physical capacity and we were where I am at right now at 30, and then 200, you're at like 40 or whatever, you would acquire so much knowledge and all of that stuff, any kind of conditioning that you would have had that was false, you would disregard that over time, over living long enough to just see the cycles in itself. You would live long enough to observe these cycles that you're talking about. And so one of the main concepts, moving beyond materialism into more compassion, more cooperation, more of that oneness mindset. In the autobiography of a yogi, Yogananda, knows when he's going to die and tells people he's going to die, and then kind of, that's when it happens. And it's this higher state and this understanding that is different than what we're taught. If he was indeed able to do that, which is a very fascinating book, I kind of tend to believe him, but my question you talked a little bit about, and I guess I'll get you to elaborate, is what do you think is happening here? People will talk about the Great Awakening, when you get into the esoteric stuff, I have heard everything under the sun, and I really am not sure. I've heard, when we die, this species has a net and we're getting reincarnated over and over and over again, and we can't get out, and all these things are happening, and now we're getting out. I don't know if you buy into any of that stuff. I'm not really sure. But my question to you is, what do you think's happening here? Do you think that we are moving towards a more awakened, enlightened society where we could see peace and cooperation and bliss and full access of our capabilities, free from disease? Which, another thing that when I research this stuff, it seems that the teachings are suggesting that disease is unnatural, that we fully have the capability to live 100% in health and in vibrance, but there's some impediments to that, and this is the reason why our lifespans are shorter and we're getting messed with from different forces. So I just kind of wanted to throw that your way and get your 2 cents on it.
Yeah, so I guess what is happening is a chosen few is being selected by their own deeds and their own doing, and they are called the holy ones, the saints. 144,000 is a symbolic number of those that will fill that space of consciousness that must be filled in order to ascend. And ascension means not only to ascend inside in your consciousness, to raise your consciousness, it also has to do with ascending out of here, ascending the planes of flesh and blood, where we need sense gratification, survival, etc. Ascend means to escape these cycles of necessity. They're necessary because they improve our souls. And so I'm not at all knowing completely what is coming. But we can go on the cycles, the patterns of before. For instance, in the scriptures, Jesus speaks of, in the days of Noah, men were eating and drinking, buying and selling, building houses, until the flood came and swept them all away. So this is speaking of how cycles end. After there is decay in the cycle where people degenerate and become ungodly, they are destroyed, so to speak, by fire or water, hence the flood of Noah. Hence St. Peter saying the next one will be a destruction of fire and the whole world will be consumed by fire. Well, this is a conscious fire. So it's possible that by the grace of the heavens, everyone is saved and awakened by fire, by a destruction of fire. When you go through the fire and have a baptism of fire, you become a mystic. MYST is fire, MIST is water. So they don't want people to be mystical. Fire, inspired by fire, hence the tongues of fire of the apostles at Pentecost. They were conscious. They had raised their consciousness. So that destruction of fire could mean destruction of this evil system. The world that has been constructed to trap us, to keep us here, to be slaves, to be ignorant, etc. It's possible that all of this will be eliminated in one fell swoop. But it's also possible that some will be taken, the rapture, hence they will be removed from this 3D world and placed in the world where they deserve to live. And they will be able to sit back and watch this world continue in one timeline down the path of destruction. Or it may be totally wiped out and another race, a civilization of some kind will be reborn on this plane, because this is a theatre and many actors have come through this theatre. So whether we graduate or not, it's up to us. It's entirely up to us. We can't blame circumstances for not advancing. We can't blame poor health, bad luck, etc. We must advance despite the torments that come upon us in this life. Some people have no money. Some people have no home. Some people are depressed, on medications, struggling, emotionally torn from relationship problems, in despair. And so how to alleviate this is with true knowledge. Once people have true knowledge, they won't be floundering in, seeing through a glass darkly. They will see clearly through the glass if they remove the soot and the impurities in the water, in their clear vision, clairvoyance. So to be clairvoyant is the secret. Clairvoyance means to have your third eye opened, like Pinocchio. Pinocchio means pineal ocular, pineal occhio. And he became a real boy. He was a puppet and he became a real boy. So how do we become Christ conscious and real? Well, we open up our Pinocchio, and we become clairvoyant. We're not looking through a glass darkly. We have our own vision. We are empowered. When you see clearly, you have power. You have power to change the world. You have power to change your life. You have power to experience all the experience you wish to. And we need to have personal empowerment. And we do this by following our Lord and model, who is Jesus Christ. He's not a real literal man, historical, like Santa Claus isn't. But there's a teaching, there is a philosophy, there's an archetype, there's a model to follow. See, Jesus gave us two models, the king and the priest, the sovereign and the spiritualist. When he walked on waters and he got out of the sleeping ship where all his apostles were sleeping, in the citizenship of Rome, he got out and walked on top of the maritime waters. He didn't sink like St. Peter. He didn't fall back or go back to the security of the citizenship and fall asleep. And he kept walking. So he taught us how to be sovereign. You don't do commerce with Rome and come out unscathed. You have to walk on God's waters. Walk on the maritime waters in God's air, above the water. See, when he was asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He replied with a question, because he is asking as king. He's not the one answering, swearing. So he taught us how to be a sovereign. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and what is God unto God. That's a sovereign. And then he taught us how to be a priest. He taught us how to raise the Son of Man. He said, "You want to be born again?" To Nicodemus, he said, "As Moses did in the wilderness, he raised the copper serpent. You must lift up the Son of Man." Well, that means to lift up the manna inside of you, the cerebrospinal fluids, and make them vibrate higher and higher and higher, and become christened and have a halo and be magical and have power to create good things. You will not be granted that power if you are not good. You will never find this power. The evil ones have a different power, but we have the true power, which is true magic, and we need to restore that power. And we do so by good deeds and good knowing, direct knowing the truth that will set you free.
Man, you touched on a lot of stuff there, and I definitely want you to continue. And the Pinocchio example was such a good one for me because, he's not a real boy. And what it made me think about was that when we're born into whatever culture we're born into, family dynamic, space, time, location, any other factor that could influence us in our lens. So much of that is external as we are navigating in this world, and we're taking on the lenses and beliefs and the ideas of wherever we're around. And so we're not seeing clearly. And rather than maybe being authentic to ourselves, where this might be right and wrong, in a very real example could be if you grow up in a certain part of the world where your family and where you are, you're a very racist, and everybody around you is like that, and in your guts that what you're doing is incorrect, but you do it anyway, and it's not authentic to who you are. But you're unable to kind of break that pattern that's being bestowed upon you right away. You're not being your true self. You're not being able to see clearly, whether it's, you want to say you're able to have a clear intuition, but I think that we all have this knowing and just the ability to be more authentic as we go about our days with ourselves and how we treat ourselves, with how we treat others, with our jobs, with the actions we take, with what we do over time. I believe those good deeds and that power and that clarity will become more and more clear over time, because it starts with, if you're going to let go of all the things that you were taught that don't resonate with you or feel dishonest in some way, it's going to take a little bit of, walking through the shadow of uncertainty, of finding that real and authentic grip and understanding to become a real person, an authentic person, exactly who you are. And so as you shared that example, that's kind of how I saw it. And what I wanted to ask you is, you're a little bit older now, and you've gone through a lot. You've been the person who was, the quote unquote evangelist, and really like wanting to connect with God and into the scriptures and studying them, and were, pious to a degree. And then, opening and seeing a whole new world, and then studying that, and having so many life experiences that were challenging and humbling in so many different ways. And so I was curious, what advice would you either give to your younger self or the younger generation living living now? Because it does seem to be a journey, and we do our best, and it seems like a lot of people go through a lot. And so would you give yourself any kind of principles to follow or advice? Because this life and just experiencing it, and all the amazing people that I talk to and the stories that I hear, we face amazing challenges within ourselves. And I'm just curious if you have any kind of guiding principles that you would have either bestowed upon yourself to miss some roadblocks, or is it just an experience that we go through and do our best, and we get our learning when we pass, and we go to the hard drive and look at all the things that we did that were great and the things that we could have improved upon?
Yeah, I would say pay attention. I would say to my younger self, pay attention, which I did anyway. I didn't think I was, but I must have. Because when it came to the time to be awakened, I had all the fields of information ready, studied, T's crossed, I's dotted, and they just all fell into place. So I would have given myself that admonition, but to pay attention to young people, to the seriousness of life, not to take themselves seriously, but life, and how to pay attention to self-improvement, real self-advancement, not in the material world, but in your own private, lonely, but important and significant life. And probably one of the greatest things I would say is to learn to have self-love and know your worth in this world. See, because the model of Jesus liberates us by making us a king and a priest. If you're a king, you're not subject to human rules, positive law. You are under God's natural laws. And if you are a priest, you're not subject to being seduced like Pinocchio. Pinocchio had to learn. Everyone was pulling him to the left and to the right. Don't go to school, Pinocchio. Come to the circus, etc., etc. Same with the men of Ulysses. They were tempted by their own lust and desires, and so they got distracted. You see, so only if you have self-worth and self-love will you be able to truly prevail and conquer the world. Because when you start realizing that you have power to overcome addictions, poor health, bad situations in life, and you start exercising that power, and you can have power over your sexual desires as well, so that you practice only godly, sacred sex and not left-hand path, depraved, lustful sex, even that can empower you. Because when you're in control of your vessel in all areas of your life, then you realize your true power to do good. And that power will come in relation to how worthy you are. Most people are looking for power, but evil people look for power to abuse and use badly. We are looking for power to generate good in the world. We want that power, and we need to exercise it. Find it first and exercise it. And that comes from self-love. So that would be the best two pieces of advice I would say to myself. Love yourself and pay attention, because there are many deceivers and there are many illusions and distractions in this world. Young people seek experiences, so they go to clubs and all sorts of places where they can meet new people. Well, meeting new people is nice, but it can be bad as well, because when you are in the breathing space of another individual in their auric field, you are absorbing all of their information into your energy field. And it's hard to get that off. And if they're bad people, as Plato said, when you go next to a conscious, perfected being, their consciousness enters you and you improve. When you go next to a thief and a criminal, your consciousness is downgraded. Birds of a feather flock together. And so it's very important to guard your friendships and your experiences, because experiences can hurt. You know, many times people have bad experiences when they're supposed to be having good experiences. For instance, how many people have a holiday to Hawaii and get sick and end up in hospital, or have a car accident and have broken bones when they're in their holiday? It happens frequently. Or when people have a plan to build some houses or something and nothing goes right for them. Or they go out to the club and pick someone up and take them home and have a one-night stand, and she gets pregnant, he gets herpes, and in the morning he takes a closer look at her face and goes, "Oh, I must have been really drunk to bring her home," and vice versa. Women have done this. And not only have you now given her your DNA and an unwanted baby, which she's going to abort probably because she's a loose woman, but now you've got this sexual disease, and all because we feel that we need experiences. Some people say, "Oh, I want to do parachute, blood sports. I want to hang glide." Well, I've heard of many, many stories where beautiful people plan some of these experiences and die and hurt themselves. Mountain climbing, bushwalking, because not to stop us from having experiences, but to have them the right way. Not for the sake of just loose pleasure and chasing after the wind and a thrill addiction that you have. It has to be grounded in things. It has to be grounded in your morals, your ethics, your standards. It has to be controlled as well. You can't just engage in pleasure and activities in a wanton manner without, the element of control. He who can control his passions and his nature is the one who ascends and becomes a master and very powerful.
Wow. Well, that's a great set of advice. What it makes me think about is the 8 noble truths of Buddhism: right livelihood, right action, right speech. And I think that you're right. I think a lot of people will seek those experiences, especially younger. I certainly did, and I still do. I hope that I know that I pursued some in the right way and some in the wrong way for sure. But a lot of people want to escape in different ways, and young men can do it in adrenaline. They can do it through stupidity quite often. And if we can be a little bit more cognizant of what we're doing it and why we're doing it, I think the intention of why we're doing it is extremely important. But I wanted to thank you so much for everything that you shared today. I invite people to check out your YouTube channel. Is it Mr. Astro Theology?
Yep.
Yeah, on YouTube, there is a mega library of stuff there that you can dive down. Some incredible videos on different esoteric and Gnostic topics. Check it out. You cover everything from the Kabbalah, the Bible, to literally anything you could think of. You probably have a video on it. But what I want to ask you is there anything that you wish that I had asked, or that you want to talk about, or you want to leave the listeners with? And feel free to share as much as you wish.
Not really. I think I covered most things. Probably I'd like to share how I'm now going to be touring with Syncretism. In 3 weeks, I'll be going to Bali for a month. I'll be doing a presentation there with some friends who are organising a presentation there. I will do one next month on the 17th in Melbourne. And it's the first presentation I will have done since 2013, which was in Lucca, Italy, Tuscany. And because I lost my passports and computer, they were stolen, I kind of had a lot of bad experiences on that tour, and I decided to not travel. But now I'm going to be traveling. After Bali, I'll go to Kentucky, and I'll be centered there on the East Coast. So presentations are being organized as we speak. So I'm just putting that out there because some good people out there might have some suggestions and ideas and might want to hear some syncretism. I'm making myself available for that. I have the health now. I have the inspiration and the energy and enthusiasm. And then after America, I'll be going to Europe. So I'm putting that out to the European people as well, so that maybe some good things can happen there for syncretism as well. I'm here to serve. I'm here to help, teach, and from waking hours to sleeping, I only do syncretism. I only do this. If I'm doing anything else, whatever it is, I'm not fulfilled, even if it's having a coffee with my best friend. I have to be doing syncretism to be happy and to walk in it and to benefit from it and to share it and to improve it, etc. So I just want to say to people to stay close to my channel, Mr. Astrotheology. Everything will be posted there and on Facebook, so you can keep up with the latest information of syncretism. From now on, anything from June forward this year will be the next level of syncretism that I'm taking syncretism to, especially my presentations, my whiteboard presentations coming up in Melbourne. That will be called How to have knowledge in all fields. So that's about it.
Amazing. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you are back to health. I know that you were pretty rough there for a bit, but I'm super fascinated about what you're going to come up with next. I can't remember how you referred to it, but going to the cycle of more health, more inspiration, more vibrance. What was the cycle you called it when you're 7 years of trial and tribulation? That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, well, that would be Ketu, Ketu, which is the south node, the tail of the dragon. And because it's the tail, it has no head. Rahu is the head, the north node. It's the head of the dragon. So Rahu, Ketu, the two nodes, intersecting nodes of the moon with the sun's ecliptic. And Rahu is going upwards for 14 days above the ecliptic of the sun. Ketu is descending down. Hence, you take a fall in your life. You lose your higher standing. You lose your head. Rahu's got the head. And so you act in a way that is totally foreign to your nature. And it's sabotage from within and sabotage from without. And I've witnessed it for the last 7 years. It's been torture. And it hasn't been a very pleasant life for me to live in. The only thing that really gave me joy was my loving relationships and my syncretism.
Well, man, yeah, I'm super glad you're out of that. It sounds really awful. And I'm excited to see you more excited, more inspired. And I appreciate your time and your work and your effort. And I invite everybody to check out your YouTube channel. Like I said, it is an absolute rabbit hole. Unfortunately, I've only been able to go through, bits and pieces of videos and interviews from good friends, but it's a plethora of fascinating information and really deep esoteric research. So I invite people to check that out. But thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to what you're going to produce next.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure. See you next time.
Sounds good. Thanks everybody for watching. Peace.